In this demonstration, I'm going to show you how we can create this wooden panel completely from scratch in ArtCAM Insignia 2015. And I'm going to do it by using a single bitmap image. So let's go over to ArtCAM Insignia now. What I can do is simply drag and drop that image that I'm going to use as a guide tool into ArtCAM Insignia. I'm going to leave the default sizes, but I'm going to set the origin position to the center and say OK. The first thing I'm going to do is turn the transparency of the bitmap image down so I'll be able to see my vectors when I'm drawing over it. I'm going to start off by creating a circle at the center of this flower. Just draw it out like so. You can reposition the center point if you need to. Create and then close that down. Then I'm going to use this circle as a guide. I'm going to hover over the middle until my cursor changes to that target symbol, and I can right click and say Insert Y Guideline. Now I'm going to use this guideline so I can create the cross section of this here petal. So I'm going to do this by creating a smooth polyline. We'll start from the center. I'll just zoom in. So we have a rise of about here. Oops, I haven't got smoothing on, so I can just hit S on the keyboard and I can smooth that one out later. We'll come down to about here. Then I want to turn my smoothing off, so it's S again on the keyboard. And we'll have a sharp end like so. Spacebar to finish. Now if you want to change anything like I do here, we can enter node editing. I can hover over that node that needs smoothing and press S on the keyboard, and you can see how that's changed. So I'm just going to manipulate these points around until I've got the desired effect. And I want something a bit like this. So I'm going to exit node editing. And I want to create a cross section. I'm going to do this by creating a circle first of all. Just snap to that line. Doesn't really matter of the diameter or radius. Create that and close it down. Go back into our node editing. I'm going to hover over these bottom two spans and press R on the keyboard to remove them. Now I'm going to zoom in here, turn the bitmap visibility off. I'm going to insert a midpoint, so pressing M on the keyboard while hovering over a span inserts a midpoint. And then I can go ahead and edit this curve like so. Bring those all down. Shift select these two. Bring these down as well. Until I've got something that looks a bit like that. Now I want to go ahead and create my spin. So I'm going to go to the 3D view. I can select the curve that I want to be spun and choose the spin tool. And you can see that's simply spun around the center point. Now I don't want to sweep 360 degrees. I want to start at angle 0 and finish at angle 45 because I want 8 pieces, just like in my bitmap image. Then I can select my second open curve and set it as the Z modulation. And you can see what that does to our spun piece there. So once you're happy and you've done that, we can say apply and close that down. Now I'm going to view from the top and stay in the 3D view to continue working. I'm going to input a straight polyline starting from the middle, holding down the Alt key and straight up the top there, spacebar to finish. Then I'm going to go to my copy and paste tool, so it's pasted exactly in the same place, and I go to my transform, and I just want to reposition this pivot point so it's at the center of my model. Now I can do a simple rotate clockwise 45 degrees of that second polyline, like so. Now I want to create an arc using the center, start and end points. I can select the center like so, then I'm going to zoom right in, do one click here, one click here, and that'll do. Close that down. I'm going to shift select those 3 new vectors and then explode them. Okay, so that's going to intersect them, and then I can delete the regions I don't want. Now I'm going to select those 3 open vectors like so and join with coincident nodes. So you'll see here I've got 3 vectors now, and after I've joined them I'll have a single vector. So we'll say join and close that down. Now I'm going to enter the node editing. I'm going to insert a point, so press I on the keyboard and another one here, and then I'm going to move this guy down. I'll just zoom right in so it's level with my design, and the same with this one here. Okay, so that's looking more and more like my actual image. Now I'll just go back to the image, so we need to take a scallop out of there. So I'll just view from the top. I'm going to draw a straight line from the center and snap to that midpoint there. Then I'll just enter the node editing and extend this guy up a bit, like so. I'm going to create a circle, and the center can be somewhere up here, and the scallop can look something like that. So when I'm happy, I'm going to say create and cancel, and then again I want to explode these 2 vectors. I can select all the regions I don't want, delete, and then I can join with coincident nodes so I have a single vector again. So I'll join those, then I'm going to use this vector to 0 rest. If I take my vectors off, we can inspect what we've got so far. Let's just go back to our bitmap image. You can see that we've got this detail here which is cut out of each petal. So I'm going to do that exact same thing on my 3D model. So I'll bring my vectors back. I'm going to use this vector as a guide. I'm going to go to my transform tool. My pivot point is in the bottom corner, so that's fine. I'm going to hold down Control and just make 2 copies. So I'll have one there. Oops, I obviously didn't. Hold down Control. So I'll hold down Control, make that copy there, and I'll do exactly the same again, holding down Control. So we have a rough positioning there. Now I'm going to go and create a polyline. We'll start quite far from the bottom and go quite close to the top. Create a single vector, like so. Then shift select the guide vector, and we can mirror in selected line, copying the original. Now I'm going to select these 2 vectors and join. Now these vectors are now just going to be guides, so I can go ahead and use my transform tool. I want to ensure that my pivot point is at the center of my model, so I can hold down Control and create those copies like so. Now I can select these 3 guides and delete them. I'm going to select my 3 closed vectors, go to my shape editor. I'm going to turn my plane off for this, so I'm making sure I'm not cutting all the way through my petal. And I want to subtract a square of smaller than that, probably about 20 degrees, and say apply. Okay, so that's looking pretty nice. I'll hide the vector visibility, and now I'm going to open up my clipart library. I'm going to create a completely new folder, so I can scroll down here until we get to reliefs, so I can select that and say make new folder. I'm going to call this AWFS because that's why this demonstration's been created, and say OK. And then what I can do is go over to my project panel. You see the word relief. I can click on that with my left mouse button and drag it over into the clipart library. Okay, and you can see it's been added to our library and saved elsewhere as a .rlf file. So I don't actually need to save this ArtCAM model. And that's why I'm going to do what I'm going to do next. So what I'm going to do now is reset the relief layer and start completely from scratch. I'm going to do one left click, and you'll see my petal has come in as blue clip art. Now I can hide my relief clip art library, and I'm going to start manipulating this to create a complete flower. So I'm in my transform tool, like so. My pivot point's at the bottom, so I can hold down Control to create a copy, and if I hold Alt down as well, it means we snap every 15 degrees. So I can snap there, let go, and then create multiple copies until I have a complete 360 degree flower, like so. Once I've done this, I'm going to box select everything and paste that down. So the next thing I need to do is create this center of my flower using that first vector I created, which was a circle. Now I'm going to go to my simple shape editor. We want to create a round, merged high. I'm going to do quite a high angle. Let's try 55 degrees. I'll zoom in to see how this is looking. We'll limit to a height of 20 millimeters, and I'll give it a start height of 10, like so. I can always toggle over to my bitmap and make sure I've got the desired shape. So once I've done this, I can say apply and close that down. So now I've got my second relief. Turn the visibility off, turn the zero plane off. I can inspect it, I can turn on my bitmap to make sure it's correct. It's looking pretty good to me. Now I'm going to open up the clipart library again, and it's remembered our location, and again I'm going to drag my relief into the library. And we could go in here and rename those files if we wanted to. So now I've done this, I'm going to create a completely new model. So I'm going to say new, and I want to create a model with a height of 300 and a width of 250, origin center, resolution up nice and high, and I am working in millimeters. So I'll say OK to that, and I'm not going to save my changes because I've already got the reliefs that I want saved. So I'll say no. And I'm going to start by creating a rectangle. So what I'm doing now is creating the panel. So I can choose to create a rectangle, I can draw the rough shape, or I can input the precise values. So I want a rectangle with a width of 190 millimeters by 245 height. And we can say create, and then I can center that using this icon here. Next thing I want to do is create an ellipse. So if you hold down over circles, you can choose to create an ellipse. Again, you can just draw out the size you want, or you can input precise values. I will have a width of 120 and a height of 172 and say create. Now I want to create the cross section, which is going to be my extrude for my panel. So I'm going to use guidelines to help me do this. I'm going to pull out a guideline up to where I want my extrusion to go up to, which can be about there. And I'll bring one down from the top just so I know where to start drawing from. I'll zoom into this region. I'm going to drag a guideline and snap it to this edge, like so. So now I want to input specific guidelines from these two that I've just dragged out. So I can right click on this horizontal guide and say edit guideline, and I want to create a couple more guidelines in offset positions. So we'll have a guideline at -2 and say insert, and we'll also have one at -6, insert, close that down. I'll select this guy, right click, edit guideline. This time I'm going to input a guideline offset +5. And now I'm going to start drawing. So my guides have just defined the shape or the snap points for my cross section. So I'm zooming right in. I'm going to create a straight polyline to start with. I'm going to snap to this corner here, and we'll go to here, spacebar to finish, and then have a nice smooth arc. This time I don't want to create the arc using the center and the start and end, but I just want to use the start and end points. So the start is here, and the end is going to be up here, and then I can just snap. You can see how I snap to that guideline there, like so. Close that down. Now I can join these together using my join with coincident nodes. So I'm going to go over to my 3D view, turn on my 0 plane, turn on my vectors. You can see that we've got a lot of guidelines shown there, and that can be quite messy. So rather than right clicking and deleting them individually, what we can do is say view and untick show guidelines, like so. So now I want to create my extrude. So let's just have a look at my cross section so you can understand what I was doing there. So we've got a straight span and then a curve. I'll go to my extrude tool. I'm going to select this rectangle as the drive rail, and then I can choose my open curve as the start profile. If you don't get the result you want, you can play around with the options. So I'm going to reverse the direction that this curve is used in, and then I have the result that I want. So I'm going to add and apply and close that down. Now I'm going to view from the top and bring in my clipart. So go to my clipart library, and I'm just going to select my flower. I'll close it down, and you'll see that it's created really big. So what I'm going to do here is just resize it. So I'm going to bring it down. We're going to lock the aspect ratio, width and height, and bring the width down to 80. And then I can also set the Z to be 5 millimeters. We'll apply and center that, and you'll see he drops into place. Now we haven't centered our ellipse yet, so it doesn't look quite right. When I do that, everything looks okay. So there we've got our quite complex flower that we created earlier and popped in our clipart library. Now I'm going to use some clipart that's already been created for you. So you don't always have to start completely from scratch. We can go to the clipart library, and I'm going to go to the greenery folder, and you can see we've got all these different leaves and flowers, and I'm going to select leaf 4 times 3. I'll select that and then close the clipart library. So he's been positioned over here. I'm going to bring him up, do a bit of resizing. I'll change the Z range to be about 1.5. You can see it just drops there behind my flower. So once you've got one of these in place, you can drag out a few more. So we'll hold down the control, we'll do a pivot, and we can position one of these over here, changing the Z range as we go. I'm also going to make the copies a bit smaller. So once I've got one in the right place, I might want to move that pivot point and create the copy a bit like that. I'm going to change the Z height of this one as well, change that to 0.8, and you'll see them drop behind there. When you've got something that you think you're happy with, you can select those 3, go to the transform tool, use that pivot point, put it at the center, hold down the control and create a copy like so. Now I'm going to select the flower, go to transform, I'm going to go to the pasting options, I'm going to add and say paste. You can see it's pasted down, it looks good. Now I can select all of these leaves, so hold down my shift key, go to my transform tool. This time I'll go to the combine mode options and I will say merge high and paste. You can see how that's looking. Now I want to select this ellipse and subtract a dome shape to incorporate this flower so it sits nicely within my panel. So I can go to my shape editor, we'll go and create a round, I want to make sure we've got subtract on there, and I can just view from the front and I can manipulate this dynamically to make sure we've not got any of those bumps pointing through. So I think an angle of about 18 looks good, and I'll say apply, close that down, and we can inspect our design. So I'll turn my vectors off and things are looking pretty nice. So once you've finished your design, what you need to do is create your toolpaths. So to do this, I'm going to just create one more vector. So I'm going to view from the top, I'm going to go into offset vectors, and I want to create a copy of this outer vector, or an offset rather. So I'm going to offset inwards and make sharp corners, and I'm going to use interactive offsetting. So that means I can just select that vector and you can see we're creating a nice copy like so. We can just pop that there because we only want to machine in this region between the two vectors. So once you've done that, all you need to do is select the ellipse vector, also select the 2 rectangle vectors, and go ahead and start creating a toolpath. So we want to create a 3D machine relief toolpath, and we only want to machine within the selected vectors. I'm going to choose a 1.5mm ball nose as my finishing tool. I'm going to choose a raster with an angle of 45 degrees, and then I will choose a 3mm end mill for my roughing. I'm going to define my material, so I've got 15mm block of material with my model at the top. When I say OK, you can see the representation of this. Now all I want to do is calculate. So once they're calculated, we can expand the toolpaths. We can turn the visibility off of one or the other. So you can just inspect the roughing, for example, or the finishing. And we can simulate them together or independently. So I'm first of all going to simulate the roughing. And you can see the 3mm tool comes in and removes the majority of the material. I will simulate the finishing toolpath, and you can see it's gone in at 45 degrees where I set that angle up, and it's machining the rest of the material that we don't want away, and we're left with our nice door panel. So I can go ahead and choose a simulation material colour, so wooden, and then all I need to do is save my toolpaths. So I click on the top level of toolpaths and hit save. Here you can see the two toolpaths that I want to save. I'm going to browse for a location. I want to save it to that folder I have on my desktop. We'll have a new folder called toolpaths. We'll open that and we'll call it cabinet door. I'm going to choose my post processor and I'm going to use the FANUC. Because it's not an automatic tool changer, I want to save toolpaths to separate files, and to make life easier for myself, I will append toolpath details to file names. Now I can hit save. I'll navigate to that folder. You can see we've got this new folder inside of it called toolpaths, and if we go in there, we've got our two toolpaths. We've got our 3mm roughing and our 1.5mm finishing. I can go ahead and have a look at these if I open it in Notepad, and there you can see the NC code. So this demonstration was showing you how we could create a wooden panel using ArtCAM Insignia 2015, using many of the tools inside Insignia, including the spin, extrude, and shape editor.